To the Gooner Talk, back again with you guys for another show, for another episode of our Let's Talk Arsenal series, our twice weekly show on a Tuesday and a Friday, typically at 5 p.m. But because of the Euros and because everything else is going on, we'll be doing these a little bit earlier in the day. And today you join us at 4 p.m. UK time for today's show, as we're going to be talking a lot about Arsenal transfers, of course, the main topic of discussion of the channel throughout the summer months. And the Tuesday show has pretty much turned now into the Arsenal Transfer Podcast, where I'm joined by a few of our expert members from the Discord server to have a chat about everything that's been going on. Of course, as it is a Let's Talk Arsenal show, it does mean that today we're sponsored by Football Prizes. And this week's prize is a pretty good one. We've got a prize which is from the all signed by the famous back four of Tony Adams, Steve Bold, Nigel Winterburn, and Lee Dixon, of a classic JVC shirt, framed, signed, certificate authentication, all of that good stuff, all available for you guys to check out. So please make sure you go to the Football Prizes website and get yourself a ticket. And of course, our two of our members this week are going to be getting a free entry into the competition as well. So we look forward to revealing who wins that next week. But without further ado, let me introduce you guys to my guest today. I mean, he's gone for back-to-back shows. He's just greedy. It's Ludwig. How you doing, mate? Are you good? Are you well?
Yeah, I'm good. Thanks. And you, Tom?
Yes, very good. Just you're right, Keno, looking at getting the double of back-to-back shows. But I appreciate you tuning in, fella. Absolutely, pleasure to have you on. And joining us also from South Africa is Sasha as well. How you doing, fella? Are you good?
I'm good, yeah. And you?
Yes, I like the fact how you're like tallying up now how many times you come on the show. Like, I think it's so if you ever get into a debate with someone on the Discord, you're like, yeah, but I've been on the show more times than you, so my opinion counts more. That's how it works. And making his full debut after joining us on a couple of the phone-in shows, and of course, is now one of our fantastic members too. It's King. How you doing, mate? Are you well?
I'm good. I'm glad to be here for the first time. It's going to be a good show.
100%, bro. It's an absolute pleasure to have you on. And I mean, I'll kick off the show, of course, by talking about plenty of Arsenal transfer topics. But King, you obviously come in to our phone-in shows a couple of times, and you've spoken a couple of times for very brief moments. But I want to know for you, really, to kick us off, what do you think is the most important part of the transfer window for Arsenal so far? And where do you think, I'm putting the pressure on you, we should begin our discussions about transfers and Arsenal today?
Wow, it's a big question. I would say outgoings is very important for Arsenal this year, more than ever before, simply because we have a squad that is too big, and this is a year where we won't be playing in Europe, so a lot of players won't be able to get game time. You know, we've used Europa League before to play our youngsters there. We can't do that this year, and obviously the revenue that comes from being in Europe, we won't have that. So I would say outgoings is massive for us, because we have to sell players to be able to buy players.
Yeah, no, 100%. I think it's a really good place for us to start, is talking about some of the players that are moving on. And I mean, one of the big stories that broke today and yesterday evening as well, of course, that Matteo Guendouzi has finally left Arsenal Football Club. He joins Marseille on a loan with what we believe to be an obligation to buy, although I have seen some conflicting reports that it's just an option. So we'll have to get that confirmed. But it's pretty much assured that he will not be returning to the Arsenal. His goodbye message certainly alluded to that fact as well. Sasha, when it comes down to Matteo Guendouzi, is this for you a sad moment? Is it a kind of a regretful moment to think that what could have been with him? Or are you kind of glad to see him go?
Well, in a way, it has to be kind of regretful, because we had high hopes for them for him in the beginning. I remember his debut against Manchester City, where we were all kind of begging for him to start that game because he was so good in pre-season, way back. And then he developed attitude issues, or he had them, he disguised them at the start, and then it started to show, and then it got worse and worse and worse as time went on. And it's most definitely the right choice for Arsenal to get rid of him. If Arteta doesn't fancy him, he should go, because Arteta's the one in charge. And if you lead an organization, you can only lead if everyone follows. If someone don't want to follow, get rid. Doesn't matter what talent he has. If he goes to Marseille now and he ends up being great, fantastic, and PSG buys him and he's the next big thing, it doesn't matter. He didn't work out at Arsenal. We should let that one go. And it's now what it is. What he makes now of his career has nothing to do with Arsenal.
That's interesting because I know for a fact a lot of people will disagree with that point because they'll look back at players like Serge Gnabry, they'll look back at players like Donyell Marlin and say, well, if Arsenal had put the more effort and time maybe when they were young and really stuck with them, then maybe would have had that. But I do lean on the side that you're saying. I think once a player has left, it's no longer a situation where Arsenal can look back with regret because there is never a guarantee of what's Gnabry's turned into, what Marlon's turned into would have ever happened if they would have stayed at Arsenal. There's no guarantees of that. Ludwig, how do you see the Guendouzi situation? Do you agree with Sacha there, or are you more down the line of no, that we should have handled this situation better?
Well, I personally believe he should have sold him last season. I was never really a big fan of Guendouzi. He did have talent, but the problem is even like with the things he has said now, with like his farewell message to Arsenal, based on his attitude and what we know of the guy, it sounds a bit disingenuous. It sounds like he's being a bit sarcastic and like trying to call out the manager and things like that. So even when he was on loan at Berlin, I mean, he had attitude problems there. He wasn't playing very good for them. So I don't really suddenly see him turning into a world beater if he couldn't even perform there. Maybe I'm wrong. For his sake, hopefully I am, but I don't know. I don't rate him anymore, especially after this loan where he didn't perform and he had issues with issues with another club, another manager and everything. So yeah, I'm fine with him going. I just wished we could have gotten the money now and not later.
Yeah, it's not loads. It's I think it's around 10 million euros, and it won't come obviously this season. It'll come next season when that loan turns into a more permanent situation. But I think it's one that we need to say kind of goodbye from and move on from. Let's see what you guys are saying in the chat box. Mark certainly agrees with you, Ludwig, there with your thoughts. And there's people saying Sasha needs to maybe turn your mic up a bit, but I mean, you know, most people are saying they can hear from you, so I'm sure that's fine. Don't worry about it, mate. In terms of what else, to scroll up a little bit more to see what other people have said about Guendouzi. 33 Specky says option to buy in with Guendouzi deal is a joke. I mean, I don't think it is just an option. I might be wrong, but I've seen reports that it could have been both. But I saw Sky Sports say it was an option, but there are other reports saying it's an obligation. So we'll wait and see and find out which one it turns out actually being. Ludwig, did you want to come in on that? Or
no, I just wanted to say if it is an option to buy, it's a big mistake from us. Like that would not help us at all, because if it doesn't perform, we just get nothing from him, and then his contract's up, and then almost up.
Option to buy loans are just never good for the selling club, ever. Like, it's just not a good deal for them in any way. You look at Chelsea with Tomori. They let Tomori go to AC Milan on loan for 6 months, attached an option to it. He had an amazing time there, arguably could have been picked for the England squad this summer, and Chelsea may have regretted putting that in, but they got no control over that situation because they've put the option in. And if it had been really bad and his value had diminished, they would have just got him back and AC Milan would have never taken up the option. It's just it puts you at complete out of control with the loan that goes. So if Arsenal end up doing that with other players, I mean, King, we've seen, I know we feel like we've talked the Saliba situation to absolute death at this point, but there were some interesting reports come out today that Marseille have been trying to put an option into the Saliba deal, which obviously we would reject and have seemingly rejected. But then I did see an interesting report saying that Arsenal, if it was to go to say a 30 million euro figure, that they would consider that. Now, we don't know if that's true or not, but does the talk of kind of these options or obligations with any kind of permanent purchase of Saliba make you feel a bit worried about his future at the club?
Yeah, obviously, as you've mentioned before, we haven't heard anything from the club or from Arteta, so we don't really know where the club stands with William Saliba. What I would say is that regardless if he's in our plans or not, I do think we should try and extend his contract, because if Saliba goes to Marseille and he's fantastic, he gets picked the team of the year, maybe France call him up for play in the national team, his value is going to be so high. And if he has 2 years left, you could see a PSG come in and be like, oh, we give you 15 million because he only got 2 years left and you're not in good terms with him, so he's not going to renew now. So I think if I'm Arsenal, if I want Saliba to be the next talent, or if I want to sell Saliba regardless, I would definitely renew his contract.
I think it's a really important thing that we move forward to try and agree that deal with him, because him coming back, as you say, 2 years left on his deal, it puts us in a really weak situation in comparison to, say, if we were able to extend it, he could just choose to basically, I mean, we think about it with the Guendouzi situation. He was the one that fell apart with Arsenal and Arteta with 2 years left on his deal, and we see how that's now run its course. So we don't want to get into the same situation with him. Interestingly, though, Sasha, is that the replacement for Saliba, or if you want to call it a replacement, but the reason why we're seemingly letting go alone is because we're confident of signing a centre-back. But Arsenal are having difficulty in kind of nailing down this Ben White signing. And is it concern you that it's kind of dragging out this situation and we're not getting it done? Or do you think it's a case of Arsenal need to make sure they pay a certain amount of money and not end up overpaying for Ben White?
Well, it kind of depends. If you look at it, maybe the deal is already completed, because we know that Arsenal takes forever to announce a signing. So we don't know. It can already be done. If it's not, then it is actually concerning. But I still think we should be able to get the deal done. And if Arteta wants Ben White, we should get Ben White. It's the same for me with the Saliba situation as with the Guendouzi. If Arteta doesn't like him, if he doesn't want to follow the leader you're trying to implement in the squad, then there's no point for me to keep them. Even if they are as good, even if you look at, let's say, the example, Mesut Ozil, even if he is good, if he's not performing to the team and the manager, it's actually worse for the manager than a positive. It's more of a negative than a positive. Then he should go. It's as simple as that. If it's not working at Arsenal, he should go. What it does from there, it has nothing to do with Arsenal. If someone else unlocks him or develops him, it's good for them. It didn't work at Arsenal, and we can't dwell on it forever. I mean, Gnabry didn't work at Arsenal. If he goes to Hoffenheim or wherever he went and does good there, then kudos to Hoffenheim, and then kudos to Gnabry for turning his career around as well. I mean, look at Chelsea. They sold De Bruyne, Salah and Lukaku, and they all said they weren't ready and they weren't expecting them to be this good, to turn out this good. And John Terry even said, I think it was John Terry even said live once on the Premier League show, he said when De Bruyne was at Chelsea, he didn't ever think he would be that player. So congratulations to Kevin De Bruyne for turning around his career, but Chelsea can do nothing about it now, because at the time it was the right decision to get rid. And we can almost say the same for Guendouzi and Saliba and Ozil and all these players. If Saliba is as good as the fan base says, then I think Arteta, bearing a problem, off-field problem, would have kept him at all cost. Because why would Arteta sabotage his own job, sabotage his own future, his own career over a player if he is that great, so to say. And even if Arteta's maybe stupid, we don't know, but it's who the club is going with now, and the club will support his decision because he's the leader now.
I understand where you're coming from. It's a very difficult situation to obviously, when you're discussing a point on this, to simply go, it's Arteta's choice, and so therefore we need to back it. And I have sat in this chair and said that many a times, that we have no control over what's going on, and obviously we've got to support the manager's decision. However, I would say is that it is still right that we do criticise certain decisions that he's made, and still do kind of evaluate decisions that are made, because that's how we know whether or not he's the right man to take the job forwards. So, I mean, Ludwig, when it comes down to the decisions in this window, for me, there is no way that Arsenal can get into the top four this season unless they get significant upgrades on a number of positions. Say we put out this kind of hypothetical situation that Arsenal don't end up getting the midfielder that we need, or don't get a right back that's an upgrade on Bellerin, or don't get anything more on Smith-Rowe, and the club lets Arteta down, and he gets given like what it looks like to be a backup centre midfielder, a backup left back, and a decent centre back that comes in. Say that's all that Arsenal end up doing, and Arteta's got to try and get that team into a top 4. Say he gets them to top 6 or in and around that figure. Do Arsenal fans then turn around and have to say, look, you know what? He wasn't backed in the market. We've not achieved the target that we wanted, but I understand that we didn't get there. Where's kind of the cut-off point for you, and where's the context for the situation?
I think it depends. Like if we don't get the players, I think we need to check why we did not get those players. If it was Edu and Arteta just failing to negotiate and taking too long, with example for the Bissouma thing, if we take too long and we can't sign him because we took too long, then I think you need to look at Edu and those guys. As fans, it's difficult because it doesn't really feel like we have a lot of power, because like even the protests with the Kroenkes and everything recently, I mean, it doesn't feel like it had much of an impact. They told us to be excited, but the transfer window, it's still 2 months, about 2 months, but it is getting shorter by the day.
Are you worried?
I wouldn't say I'm worried yet. I think if Xhaka hasn't gone by next week and we haven't, it's difficult. The Ben White thing is a bit difficult because I think maybe he's away with the Euros now, so I think completing the deal now might be a bit difficult.
Yeah.
But if we don't make any decent signings or look like we're going to make decent signings in the next 2 weeks, and we continue with like Locatelli, who doesn't even want to come to us, or we continue with, we're linked to these players but no real progression in the talks or anything, then yes, I'm really getting worried about that. But for now, I'm trying to be positive, but it's a bit difficult. Because we're linked to everyone, but it doesn't seem like we're getting anyone. And then I'm not sure how true the links is with like Everton and Ben White, and then Chelsea and Ben White, and City and Ben White, because it just feels like everyone's suddenly getting linked to Ben White. So that might just be a clickbait story. Or if we don't get Ben White, if another club signs Ben White, not that I think Ben White's really that important to us, but if another club signs Ben White after we've been pursuing him, then I'd start to worry, because clearly the plans are not working out.
Yeah, and I mean, we saw it with the Buendia situation, and whilst I don't think he was anywhere near Arsenal's kind of priority like Ben White clearly is, the fact that a team that we would consider are trying to really kind of replace us, and that's their target, is to be where Arsenal are at and oust Arsenal from that position, is that they will look to, that is a worrying sign for me. And so when you look at sides like Chelsea get linked with White, and Liverpool, Man City have also been linked with him as well, there is part of me that goes, well, maybe that's coming out from his agent's point of view, trying to push Arsenal to panic and spend the money necessary to get that deal done. But at the same time, I don't doubt that these clubs, in fact, we know pretty much categorically that there is widespread interest in Ben White from lots of top clubs across the Premier League and abroad as well, as we saw from PSG. So it's a really difficult situation for Arsenal to balance overspending on a player that is worth a certain amount and then risking him going to one of your key rivals and missing out on a really kind of top class potential player that we could get. Sasha, do you want to come in?
Yes. So I wanted to compare Ben White's situation currently to the one of Rafael Varane. And I see a lot of people saying that Varane at 45 million will work Arsenal out cheaper than getting Ben White for 55 million, which indeed won't be the case. It will only be the case for the actual transfer fee. But when you have to take into account the contract that's offered to the player. So if you didn't know, Ben White is currently on 6.7k a week, which is 350k a season. If Arsenal were to give him 10 times the wages he earns now, which is 65k a week, he would cost Arsenal 3.5 million a year. Over 5 years of a contract would be 17.5 million, which means the total package of Ben White's cost to Arsenal will be around 67.5 million to 72.5 million. Whereas Varane is currently at Real Madrid on 150k a week, earning 7.2 million annually. And if he moves to Manchester, he might take the same contract, or he might want a bigger contract. If you compare to Harry Maguire, who earns 190k a week, you'd say he might get offered the same kind of deal. He would earn 10 million a year for 5 years, which is 50 million, which means Varane would actually cost 95 million to Manchester United. If you look at it from the package of the whole deal, not just only the transfer fee.
You can tell Sasha's a member of TGT, can't you? He knows his stats. No, the thing about those two situations, obviously Varane right now is a much better centre-back than Ben White. I don't think anyone's going to debate that point. Statistically, we might even be able to go out and say that Ben White's got some stats that look better than Varane. I imagine that, Sasha, what that face is that you're pulling.
No, but what I will say is Varane hasn't had Premier League experience before, which is something that comes at the premium, because it's paid by other Premier League clubs to develop players in the Premier League, giving minutes to the players. So it will come at a premium. And then Varane will also be, when his contract runs out, will have no sell-on value to Manchester United. Plus, he's already achieved everything there is, so his motivation levels might be even lower to perform at Manchester United. So there's a lot of argument that Ben White would be the better signing than Varane, because in 5 years' time, Ben White will only be 28 in his prime, which means he will have loads of sell-on value or extended contracts and more years at Arsenal, which gives Arsenal the value in return, as well as Ben White might grow to become a better player than Varane, whereas Varane, without the Premier League experience, might find it more difficult, and Ben White might actually turn out to be the better signing. So
yeah, there's all that possibility in the world that he can obviously turn out to be a better signing in the long run than what Varane will from Man United. Now, I'm not going to put myself on the same precipice and say that I think White is better right now than Varane. I don't think that's what you're saying, Sasha, by the way, at all. But in the long term, obviously, when you compare the two deals, say in 5 years' time, should they both happen, you might have a very good argument to say that White turned out to be the better signing. That's all speculative, of course, right now. There's another point to this, which is, King, that what frustrates me sometimes is the expectation around the kind of signings that Arsenal are expected to make. I suppose by using Varane as an example, but also we've seen it with Camavinga. These types of signings, Arsenal fans are obviously desperate to see the best players be at Arsenal. But for me right now, it's not a realistic expectation to see Arsenal compete with Chelsea, with Man United for certain signings. I mean, Chelsea go out and win the Champions League, and now they're in a position where they can actually go for someone like Erling Haaland this summer, which is an unbelievable kind of move for them to be able to do. Arsenal don't really have a hope in hell of being able to compete in that kind of sense. And when you see certain tweets saying like, oh, Arsenal could have got Camavinga for 30 million quid, but instead we're going for a Ruben Neves at 5 million more, etc. Even though price is never reflective of quality, 9 times out of 10 anyway. Is it frustrating for you to see kind of this skewed expectation that isn't in line with the reality of what Arsenal are capable of doing? Or, to not kind of leave you with a loaded question, or is it for you a case of, no, actually Arsenal should be more ambitious and they should be looking to try and compete with the signings being made by those of Man United, Chelsea, etc.?
I think it's a fair argument for both. I think the issue is with Arsenal and a lot of Arsenal fans is that we were sold a dream that we were going to move to Emirates, and after a few years, we were going to compete with your Bayern Munich, with your Barcelona, Real Madrid. We were going to compete to win the Champions League. We were going to compete to win the Premier League, and everybody was almost 80-90% of the fans was on board with this, like, let's suffer of a couple of years and then we're going to be with the big boys. Obviously, the rest is history. This never happened and we are far away from doing that. So I think that frustration is still with Arsenal fans. And then also you have the fact that we have bought players like Mesut Ozil, Alexis Sanchez, Aubameyang, Thomas Partey. So we have signed big name players. But if you look at it, did it actually make us better as a team? Did it take us to where we needed to be? Or should we look at another model? Maybe is it more important to find the right player for the right position rather than, oh, a big name is available, let's go and buy him? I mean, we've seen with Liverpool that they got rid of Sterling, they got rid of Coutinho, they got rid of Luis Suarez, and it hurted them and the fans were complaining. but in the long run, they won the Premier League and they won the Champions League. I don't think any Liverpool fans are missing these players anymore. And I think Arsenal have to look at something similar, like getting players at a good deal that can do what the manager wants them to do. Because ultimately, that's what Klopp did. He went for players that could do what he needed them to do, not for players who could sell a lot of shirts or come with a big fancy name. That didn't help them. And I think we need to look at that and see, where do we want to be? Do we want big players with big name, or do we want players that can play the style of football that they need to play and take us to a higher level?
It's a really kind of well-rounded and well-said point, King, because when you think about the players that Klopp brought in and those players, there were also quite a few from the Premier League. Andrew Robertson, of course, came in from Hull City. I think actually we're maybe in the Championship at the time. You got Sadio Mane coming in from Southampton, and they've gone out and they've signed these players and improved their team, and ultimately have done that from within house, but they've also gone out and found some gems from abroad. Mohamed Salah, whilst having Premier League experience with Chelsea, obviously came in from Roma. They've gone out and when they've established themselves, gone and spent big on specific positions that really propelled them once they'd established themselves in the Champions League towards the title, like Van Dijk and like Alisson. And Arsenal fans sometimes, I think, feel that right now we should be going for the Van Dijks and the Alissons of this world, when that's not the level that we're at right now. We need to get to the position where Liverpool were when they signed those two players to be able to do that. And to do that, we need to be looking at the Robertson and the Sadio Mane stage of that development, of that journey. That's where I see it. I mean, does anyone want to come in on that point? Because I think it was a really good one started off by King there.
Not the exact same point, but in a similar manner. Like, the only thing I'm really scared of about Arsenal and for now is if we don't start competing again for Champions League spots for the top four in about 3 to 4 years, when our youngsters, when their contracts are starting to run out, Saka, Emil, if he signs a new contract, Martinelli, all these guys, if like they're world-class players, and if we're not going to compete, they might start looking somewhere else. And if they go, then I think we're going to struggle to sign new players, and we're going to be in a bit of a rough spot in about 4 to 5 years if we don't start competing again.
One of the biggest things that Arsenal have never done is build upon a foundation that they had originally built. We did it with Ozil and with Sanchez, and we never went further. We had that summer where we signed Petr Cech, and that was it. We never really built on that, and we've missed chances. And that is ultimately where we find ourselves now, is we've made mistakes in the market, spent a lot of money on players that haven't improved us. I mean, we all appreciate Aubameyang and Lacazette at times for what they've done, but since we've signed them, we've gone backwards because we've not signed in the key areas like centre-back, centre midfield when we needed to with enough quality. Let's go into the chat box then, because we have reached the part of the show where we're going to go through some of your questions for the next 15 or 20 minutes. Let's go to Sasha. Cam says, why has everyone got a raging one over getting a new centre-back when it's our chance, creation and shots on target that let us down last season?
Well, mainly because we've lost a centre-back in David Luiz, so we need to replace him. And last season, we were good at centre-back, but we weren't exceptionally great at centre-back, especially with the chance creation coming from centre-back. If you look at what Arteta will be trying to do with the signing of like Ben White, he will use him to fit his system, which he wants to play. So if it's a piece of the puzzle of the process that Arteta needs, then it needs to get done. If it's a more important piece than the one of a chance creation as an attacking midfielder, then who are we to argue with that?
Yeah, no, fair enough. Let's go to Neil De Souza in the chat, King, who says, are fans to be blamed for what was promised? It would have been better for the club to be truthful to the fans. I mean, there's something that you brought up earlier about kind of what we were promised, and yet we sometimes get very critical of fan opinions and what they're like at present and what their expectations are and how we feel they're not necessarily in line with the realism of what we are in right now. So should fans be criticised for wanting what is not necessarily realistic, but after having been sold a dream of what you talked about earlier?
It's a complex question, because the fans are loyal to the club. The fans are the heart of the club. Without the fans, there is no club. And I think sometimes fans doesn't get enough recognition or importance to how important they are for the club, because we are the one who buy the merch, who go to the games. You know, without us, there's no high wages, there's no big players and all of that, and there's no big sponsorship. So in a way, no. In another way, yes. I think there's a limit in everything. You know, you can't just sit blindly and like, why doesn't Arsenal go and buy Mbappe? He doesn't want to stay at PSG. Why, why don't we go and get Haaland? If we put the money there, or why don't we go and get Harry Kane? There's a limit to it, and I think sometimes with fans nowadays, they don't have any patience because everything is on social media. You want to compete with the United fans, the Liverpool fans. It's the banter area on social media. So you want to be on the high horse and be like, we got this player, we did this, we did that. And when we don't do what we are doing and other fans are laughing at us, it gets frustrated. Fans get impatient and they want more and more and more. And sometimes we want things that is not realistic, or we even want things that is not necessarily even what we need.
Yeah, I mean, once again, just rounding off the point, fantastic work, King. And what frustrates me sometimes, I suppose, is I am very much someone that tries to make sense of a situation and really genuinely tries to put my mind in that of the club, which sometimes is very difficult to do because what we associate with the club is mismanagement. And we associate a genuine, almost a hatred that many people have towards the way that the club is run, and quite rightly, because the club that we love so much is being run horrifically right now. But when you try and put yourself in the club situation, try and think realistically, obviously for me, like the Saliba situation is a great example, because to me it makes complete sense that they want to send him on loan for another season, because the last 3 seasons he's played 20 and under games every league season. To come in this year and be back up to a £50 million signings, it's just not going to help him develop, and it's not going to help him prove to anyone that he deserves to be starting. So I see that as making sense, but then there are other things, I suppose, that don't necessarily fall into that category. Ludwig, a question from one of our other members, Mr. Joe Kerr, who's also been on the show a few times, says, set aside the actual players we are linked with and question, will these additions provide the springboard for a top 4 or top 6 finish? We failed to push on from past Champions League and FA Cup kind of wins in the past. Do you think, I mean, when you think about the players that we're linked to, Ben White, your Lokongas, your Tavares coming in. I suppose at right back you can talk about the ones who've been linked to, like a Celik, like a Mert Mulder. Looking at attacking midfield, have been linked with previously. Erdogan and Buendia has gone quite quiet, but you can see the level of player that we're going through. In midfield, you're looking at players like Ruben Neves and maybe Bissouma if we're ever lucky. Do those types of names, were asked to get them in, do you think that's enough to push Arsenal to compete with the Chelseas, the Uniteds, the Cities, the Liverpool? Because that's 4 teams, and we have to get past at least one of them to get to that target. Oh, I've muted you. That's my bad, Ludwig. That's all my fault. There you go.
It's fine. I think it's a bit difficult because we have seen these clubs spending loads and loads of money for the past few seasons now. But when you look at it, our net spend and players sold, the players that we sold, the net spend is not really far off from theirs. So it's a bit difficult because our transfer policy has been a bit bad. So I'm a bit more encouraged by the type of players we're going after, players that can play a few seasons and they will also have sell-on value. Like Lokonga is a young guy. We can play him, his value can go up, and we can sell him for more money. And if he's a great player, we can keep him. So I feel it's a good sign. I don't know if those type of players are enough to put us in top 4 in the next 2 seasons. Maybe hopefully the next 3 or 4 seasons. I do want us to compete for those spots, but I don't think if we don't get like a marquee signing, like a really good player in the midfield, I don't think we're going to compete for top 4. Like, I don't think the players we're currently linked with, maybe Madison, but I don't think we're going to get him. So I think if we get a really good signing in the midfield, then maybe we can push for top 4 if we get all the other players in the other positions. Like, we can get a right back from Barcelona, like any one of the 2 I would take at this point. Seeing their financial struggles, it does hurt a bit for me because I do like the team, but I would like I would like to see us maybe exploiting their financial troubles and maybe picking up a few good players from them. So if we can do that, if we can get a good right back, we have the backup left back, and get a really, really good midfielder, then I would be happy. Think maybe we can push on, but I'm just not sure we're going to.
Sasha, Alex Williams says, if Arteta ends up having the same start as we had last season, and in which case I'll be shocked if they do manage to keep him on, who would you be looking for as a replacement?
It's going to be difficult to replace someone mid-season. I can't really see, in my personal opinion, Arteta getting sacked in the middle of the season. So we have seen that there's a lot of change currently at Arsenal. There was a lot of mistakes made, by the previous regime, and the new regime are trying to fix it. And it's only started actually since Rahul has gone, and that has been January last year. So when we decided to let Ozil leave, let Kolasinac leave, let Mustafi leave, we still paid £13 million to let them leave, because that is the sunk cost we incurred by making those mistakes. And I think the point I'm trying to make is that they are all looking at the relevant to what we are now, and not what we've been 10, 15 years ago, where we are now, and how can we get back to there. And the new regime, which is Edu and Arteta and them, all have, and Kroenke and Vinay, all of them sat together, thought of a strategy, a long-term strategy, because it's not going to take a season, and they all said, this is the project, and this is where we need to be at that point of the project. This is the milestone we need to reach. So we don't know exactly what their milestones is, but it could be to qualify for top 4 next season. It could be to get top 6, which I hope it's not. I really hope it's more than that. But if Arteta doesn't reach his milestone at the part of the project where he should be, then I can maybe see him get sacked at the end of the season. But I don't think... I'm pretty sure they're going to say, if we get the same start, they're going to say we're going to stick with him because he's going to turn around. He's going to turn it around again. No,
that's fair enough. I also think when you look at what Spurs went through, getting a new coach this summer, the idea of losing Arteta and who you replace him with and all of that. I mean, I understand that Antonio Conte is obviously a coach that's out there, and it'd be great if he was the head coach of Arsenal. He probably would put us in a much better position than we are now, to be honest. But are Arsenal going to be able to offer him the financial backing that he wants? Well, at the moment, we're seeing some decent links to some big spending, but nothing actually has substantially happened in that area. So we'll have to assess that at the end of the window. But beyond that, there just aren't any really top managers around. And it's not to say that you should then just stick with a bad one. It's just trying to be realistic of the expectation of, if you do move on from Arteta and you cut this project off and you say, I've had enough now, which I have said. I said it at the end of last season. I thought he probably should have gone based upon where we finished up and what happened during the season. I just can't see who you bring it. Go on, Sasha.
It's not too late to sack Arteta and get Conte in before the start of the season and before we make our signings, just saying. But we all know
you're right. It won't happen.
They are trusting their own project, and
they are.
Maybe the fans can learn from it.
Oh wow, it's a big call, Sasha. It's a big call. Oh dear, you've unleashed a wrath upon yourself now. Sam Dresner in the chat says, round table question. One number answers only. What number tempts you to sell Emil Smith-Rowe? So no explanation. King, coming to you first. Give me a number, and I'll say the number is obviously the amount of millions you're expecting. So what number are you going for?
I'd say anything from 60 million above would be tempting.
It's lower than I thought. Ludwig.
32 sounds fine. I'm joking. I would say about 80.
Fair enough. Sasha?
Imagine the scenes if Arsenal sell him for only 32 million.
Oh, man.
No, I want to give a big explanation again, because I like being
You're not
objective.
allowed.
But if you only give a number, then I'd say 65.
Interesting. 100 for me because I'm greedy. So that's what I'm going for. 100 million. You can have smith-rowe.
You would see the biggest protest ever if we sell smith-rowe for 32
for 32 million. Can you? You'd see the biggest protest ever. Yes, but nothing would change. Absolutely nothing. Because that's what happens. We protest and nothing happens. That's
if we do something for that, then it might be time to abolish the project.
Just maybe. King James Rose says, do we need a more experienced CEO over Vinay Venkatesham, who seems to be out of his depth?
It depends on what you mean with experience. I mean, for me, I've been critical of Vinay for a long time. I think he's not really a football man, and I think that's why we brought in someone like Garlic. I think that's why Mikel Arteta got promoted. Because I don't think Arsenal were ready to sack Raul when they did. They just had to. We don't know 100% why, but clearly they had to. I would have loved to bring in someone like a Mark Overmars maybe, or Ralph Ragniak, But I do think we need someone else than Vinay. I think he's been at Arsenal for almost 10 years. And in each department he's been with, it's hard to see where we have done progress.
I just can't see what he does. I don't know what he does. I really struggle to kind of identify. Like, someone could give me a list of his responsibilities and go, that's what he does. But what I mean is that I've not seen any progression, any indication that things are in good hands, that he's doing a good job with anything. Like, I haven't seen anything so far. And when he does the fan forums and stuff, obviously it's only the way that you can come across is by those conversations, but I don't get any confidence from him. I don't get anything coming out like this guy is hell bent on getting Arsenal back to where they want to be. For me, he kind of falls into that kind of same category of just being okay with how things are. And that's where I kind of see that executive level right now. And I agree with you 100%, King, about Richard Garlick coming in. That, for me, stinks of the fact that Vinay is not good enough to run things from a football point of view enough to run that role by himself. We obviously would love a Ranić or someone with a real footballing brain about them at that level. But Arsenal are such a closed book, and they're so kind of picky about whoever they let in. It's almost you can't even trust who they do end up bringing in, because they must have had to go through so many different checks and pass so many different kind of expectancies that before they even get that appointment. So that in itself is a bit concerning. And also another reason why, if you ever to get rid of Arteta, there's never any trust for me that they'll make the right decision in whoever comes in. So
that's so frustrating. Honestly.
It is. It's really frustrating, and the only way that gets proven wrong is by the actions of the club, and initially that is in the form of a transfer window. We were told by Edu and Arteta that there's a plan. That's what we were told, and what everything was going on about. But there seems nothing at the moment to say to me that plan is being realised so far, because we're days away from pre-season. I mean, some players have already returned for pre-season, and we've not brung a single player in. I mean, I know that Tavares has made his flight to London and all that, but at this moment in time, we've not made a single, and especially, and not even necessarily like you think of your Tavares and Lokongas, etc., a single signing that makes a genuine difference to a position that we desperately need changing. That's what we've not seen, and that's what's so frustrating. As tomorrow I sit down for the 65th 8 a.m. transfer video. Anyway, that does bring us to... Yeah, go on, quick, go on.
So, and sorry maybe for going back, but it's regarding the Saliba situation. We do knew last year that Rob Holding was probably going to go on loan to Newcastle because he wasn't seemed to be ready. Arteta did admit that he didn't think that Gabriel was ready, but he still went on and was the best player for 3 months. So is it fair to say that maybe Arteta's judgment, especially on centre-backs or young players, can be questioned, and maybe Saliba should have been given a chance first before taking a decision?
I'll throw to you, Ludwig, first, and I'll get Sasha's thoughts, and I'll come in at the end. What do you think, Ludwig, about that?
I think it's difficult. I think, look, Arteta, it's a difficult question. I do think you should definitely question the manager. Like, no one is above criticism. Absolutely no one. But if he doesn't see the work, if he doesn't think the player is ready and he does play him, and he doesn't go out on loan and he plays, and he fails, if we do, for instance, if we don't get in a Ben White and we trust Saliba and Saliba fails, Arteta is going to get the same amount of criticism that if Saliba's gone, people will still say, yeah, but why is Arteta trusting this young kid? Which is, it's difficult, but I prefer Saliba to go to a Premier League club. If we went to a Premier League club, we can actually see how good he really is. But sending him to France, I think it says a lot about the player and the manager. I don't think that's a good idea.
Sasha?
Well, I'm gonna counter topic it by saying, what the hell did he do last season by playing Pepe getting good form, and then saying he's going to the next level and then benching him the next game? That is something that's really questionable for me about Arteta so far. But at the end of the day, we don't know what goes on behind the scenes, and it might have a bigger impact than we think it does. But to me personally, my argument is just that I can't see him sabotaging himself. I can't see him not picking the best team he thinks is the best team. And unfortunately, what he thinks might be wrong, as I've said, but there's not much we can do about it. We either have to trust him, or you can moan about it every day. It's your choice.
At the end of the day, no one is beyond criticism in kind of the broad spectrum of football. No one is. Unfortunately, in the microclimate of Arsenal, they certainly are. That's what we find ourselves in, is that we support a club where people are beyond criticism. And it doesn't seem that, and the word accountability time after time comes up as something that we desperately want, and something that I thought that Arteta was going to bring in, and has several times, seemingly, with the Willian situation, the amount of times he played Bellerin when he needed to change, didn't bring that accountability in like I did. There was some aspects with Guendouzi, like we look at that and you think, yeah, 100%, he's exiled a player that stood up to him, etc. But I am worried that maybe it goes too far in the other way, and then without consistency, which is always a big thing. Ludwig, I feel like you want to come in. You slam that microphone down with Le Plomb there. Go on.
Yeah, I just want to say, like, it looks like Arteta is really strict on, like, the players with, like, personal issues, with, like, personalities, with big personalities. Someone like Guendouzi, for instance, like, is very strict on that. But then, like, even the game he benched Oba for being late, which wasn't good from our captain. But yeah, but I feel like when based on performances, he's not that strict. Like, he plays players that are not performing, like Willian, way too much, instead of giving someone like Martinelli a chance. And I do have a really big problem with that. Like, even the thing Sasha said with the Pepe thing, like, I don't understand how you can say a player is doing good and he's getting to form, but then you don't play him for like the next 3 to 4 games. And even when it's possible to sub him on, you just don't sub him on. You bring on someone like Willian, who doesn't make a change at all for the team. So that's why I'm questioning Arteta. Yeah, that's why I don't like the guy.
At the end of the day, at the end of the season, Arteta admitted that he made mistakes, and that's obviously a good sign. So you'd hope that he's not going to be stubborn and make those same issues again this season, and that there will be change. That's what gives me encouragement about this season, despite me feeling that any other club in the world, they would have moved on and got a different coach by this point. But it gives me hope. Sasha.
Yeah, so I just want to continue with the argument about the mistakes part. So we sometimes forget how competitive the environment is, the scene is. I mean, every single club wants the best plan, the best players, the best strategy, the best everything, and we see so many mistakes being made. I mean, look at Barcelona, look at the maze they are in. I mean, they're giving Griezmann £150 million over 5 years, which didn't work out, or you could say, yeah, he did good here and there, but he's not worth that amount of money, and now they are in financial debt partly due to that reason. I mean, look at Zidane, he made mistakes. I mean, Pep in the Champions League final. I mean, we all rave about how good Pep is, but even he, on the bigger stage, when it's competitive, when the pressure is on, everyone makes mistakes. And Arteta is unfortunately learning on the job, and that is why I still might have faith in him over the long term, and the club as well, because what he does now and what he does in 3 years might be different. He might learn what he did wrong and continue doing the right thing going forward. So unfortunately, there's gonna be mistakes, and we just hope that there's the mistakes Arsenal keep making are getting sorted out and getting less and less and less and less.
We are going to wrap things up there. We've given you a little bit longer than we have a plan on going on for, so I hope you've appreciated that, guys. What I want to do say about the chat is I've obviously been reading through the chat box whilst the guys have been having a chat. There's been a few kind of themes of conversation, one of which is obviously the point of view that as fans, which we are, is that we can't have a real opinion about the club. That's something that a few people have raised, and that if you do have an opinion that say what would be perceived as being critical, that it's not supporting the club. I just want to say, first of all, that's a load of rubbish. It's a load of absolute rubbish. And especially, I do find it, and to be honest, I do like to put out the fact that TGT is a place where you can come and have an opinion about the club. So do not, for a second, if someone tells you that you can't be critical, can't have an opinion, positive or negative, about the club, critical or constructive, like in any way, that if someone tells you that you're not a coach, you never managed at any level, you never did this, you never did that, you are very much still entitled to have an opinion about a decision, about a substitution, about a managerial appointment, about a transfer. You are entitled to that because that's your right as a fan, and that's why we watch the game, and that's why, ironically, people tune into shows exactly like this one. So I do find it very odd that anyone would tune into any fan discussion channel to say that you're not a coach, you don't know what's going on, because it's very hypocritical.
What's the point?
It's very strange. So I do just want to point that out, because I want to encourage people in the chat box to have opinions. I want to encourage you three never to be discouraged by anyone that would tell you that you're not a coach, you're not a qualified expert in any field, and therefore cannot have an opinion. Football is entirely about opinions, and especially discussion and podcasts are all about opinions. And all I would say to those that disagree is, if you don't like it, you don't have to tune in. It's no skin off our back. It really isn't. Anyway, thank you so much, guys, that have tuned in and enjoyed it. And even if you haven't, I thank you for tuning in anyway and listening to some varied opinions on football, which is what it's all about. Really do appreciate you guys, absolutely. And if you could drop a like on the video and subscribe to the channel if you're new, we would appreciate it. I'd just like to say a massive thank you to my brilliant panel of members this evening. Ludwig, thank you ever so much. Really appreciate your time, mate.
It was very fun being here once again. Maybe I can make it 3 for 3 next week, but that's just wishful
round
thinking.
of the competition. It's round 3 for Ludwig. Of course, if you'd like to come on the show and challenge Ludwig for a place, which is clearly something we need right now, and you'd like to join up and join our Discord server, if you would like to join up as a member, you can, and that gives you access to the Discord server if you join up as an expert member or as a TGT ambassador. So I encourage you, please, to do that. Sasha, I mean, I don't know what's happened throughout the day, but gradually you've been fading into darkness. I don't know if you're just too scared to run off screen and grab the light, but I appreciate you anyway.
The room actually doesn't have a light. So
it doesn't have a light? What?
Yeah, no, like, wow. The light doesn't work.
Wow.
This is South Africa, Tom.
This is South Africa.
Yeah, I take it for granted, the power of illumination. I take it for granted, clearly. Thank you so much, Sasha, for coming. I really appreciate your time, mate. If you didn't have to respond, you could if you wanted to.
No, I thought it wasn't a response. No, I'm happy to be here again. Hopefully I didn't dwell too much on the points. And hopefully I can make it 3 appearances on TGT soon.
Absolutely. He's tallying them up, guys. He's tallying them up. He's going to come out in the lead soon. We need some more competitors. And finally, King, what a fantastic debut, a full debut from yourself. You've been brilliant on the phone-in shows, and you're brilliant today as well, mate. Thank you ever so much for coming on.
Oh, thank you for the kind words. As I've said before, I think this is a great, great community that you've built up. Your shows are top class, and it's an honor to be here, honestly. And big up to everybody in the chat as well. You're doing a fantastic job, most of you.
Most 99% of our listeners are fantastic, and we love them for it, whether they agree with us or not. But obviously, we've built. It's not me, King. It's everyone. Everyone here involved with the channel has built an amazing community, and you guys are very much involved with that too, and we hope you will be for the long term. As you guys as well in the chat box, thank you so much for tuning. I'll be back tomorrow for, as I said, the 65th 8 a.m. transfer video to give you more updates about what's going on and who we haven't ultimately signed. See you again very, very soon, guys, and as always, up the Arsenal.